Welcome to the Boss It Weekly podcast, a no-nonsense, no-hype, frank and close-up analysis of what is currently working and what is not in the world of software. The Boss It podcast is packed with major takeaways for software business owners and managers. So, let's begin.
Well, it's Friday and it's podcast season 2, Boss It. And I've got a guest which I'm going to introduce to you in a moment. And I think you're going to enjoy this. He's a lot of fun, a lot of experience, and definitely a lot of energy. And that's really going to come across in this podcast. And that's what I love to hear. But I wanted to quickly just go back to the last podcast that I did. And I was talking about one of the things that I've seen for many years, but it's been sort of made more aware to me, sometimes through people that are quite close to me, and some clients that I've seen, is about stress. There's a big push at the moment around mental health issues, trying to make it something that is much more easily to discuss. And I think particularly for men, people in the software tech industry, you tend to work, move at a fast-moving pace. And I would like to do a podcast on that topic, specifically for senior executives in the software tech industry, about managing stress. I.e., you may have had issues with stress and you want to talk about it, or maybe that you've got ways of dealing with stress. I think one of the things that I've seen is people that have somebody that they can confide in, and that's not always within your organization. So I actually had a meeting with somebody end of last week, who told me quite a bit about their background. As many entrepreneurs do, he's a tough guy, and he'd been through some tough times, and I think that had created some stress, but he kept going and he kept pushing, and he's starting to get some success. And I think at some stage I'd like to invite him onto this podcast. I had a really fascinating meeting with him, and the meeting went on much longer than I planned. But he admits, he's had issues with stress, and it can affect you, and it can affect your performance, but most of all, it can affect your health. So if there's anybody out there listening who would like to suggest some ideas, has some questions, has some experience, or even like to come and talk about it, I'd really like to hear from you on that one. And the other point that's come up in a lot of the meetings that I've had recently, and this is with some of the newer software companies we're seeing, is about scaling. And you can approach that in many different respects. But what I've been seeing is it from two aspects: is the software founder who understands his topic to great depth, is really good in front of the customer because they're passionate, because they're authentic, and because they know their topic, and they build a success. They're very good in front of prospects. I think the fact that they are CEO, because also somebody who's looking to buy a solution, if they're talking to the CEO, they're probably going to treat them or think of them slightly differently than they will a salesperson. But the issue comes when that founder starts to bring in salespeople. And I've often heard people say to me, well, when I get in front of a properly qualified prospect, I'm going to sell to them 80% of the time or 70% of the time. And then I bring in these salespeople and they're no good because they just can't sell. And the point that I would like to make, and maybe we can have a podcast on this in future, is that's not the salesperson's fault. That's yours. Because obviously you are going to be able to sell more effectively. It's going to be a lot easier because you've lived and breathed this and you are who you are. But to be able to bring in salespeople, and there are good salespeople out there. There are, nobody wants to come into an organization as a salesperson and fail. Very few people are coming in to just sort of skive and perform poorly. But you need to do that in the right way, and that's one aspect of scaling. And I think the other one aspect of that is actually looking at your solution, and as you become more successful, there are certain aspects that you need to look at within your organization, because selling more of what you had, it's going to require that you've really thought about it from a number of different aspects. Is the architecture, is the fact that you probably with customers, as you create that scalability in as many areas as possible, you need to make that low touch. And that low touch final point is probably a good lead in. Hopefully, Greg will think the same. To my guest today, who is Greg Dickenson. And well, I'm going to get him to introduce himself and tell you what he does now. But Greg Dickinson comes from Greenville in South Carolina, which he was telling me a little bit about just before we started this podcast. And I had a conversation with him not that long ago, and I was really impressed with his energy and his passion, and we had a good conversation. It was fun, so I thought it'd be worth having on there. So welcome, Greg.
Mark, thanks so much. I love those two intro topics. I want to talk about those too: stress and scaling. Those are dynamite topics.
Yeah, it's something that comes up very frequently. Well, probably not the stress side, to be honest with you. I know it's there. It tends to be with the people that I know very, very well, and I've seen it happen a number of times. But it's important.
They call that the kind of hidden danger, right? Because no one wants to admit it. So I'm going to tell you right now, I'll admit it. I'm stressed. Why am I stressed? I'm stressed because I'm always striving. I'm always worried. Are we going to get that customer? Is someone else going to do what I'm doing? How do I own this market? Boy, how do I hire these right people? How do I make my numbers, right? I'm always concerned about those things. And one of the tricks I found, I have a hobby. I'm a woodworker. I would never be able to do it for a living. That's why it's a hobby. But
yes.
When I do it, Mark, I have to focus like for 2 hours at night on cutting the wood so I don't cut off my finger. So work, like I don't think about work for 2 hours. It's the only time, and I'm guilty. My wife will tell me, you're not even like talking to you right now, are you? You're thinking about work, and she's right. So when I'm woodworking, though, I'm focused because I don't want to hurt myself on that. So it really allows me to kind of decompress for an hour or 2 hours on something and then go back to work, right? Because no matter what you do, if you're a CEO, if you're a SVP, if you're Mark and you're running podcasts, you're constantly thinking about how to improve. So I'll admit it, I have it. There's sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night worried about my business. I'm not going to hide it, right? It's what it is, what it is. It's how do you deal with it and how do you turn around and use that, kind of to an advantage as opposed to stressing people around you out. I think that's the key, right? Is you don't want other people to be stressed out because you are.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting one, and I earn my living. I'm in the mergers and acquisitions world within the software sector, and we provide consultancy around that. But I love the idea that you do woodworking, and I think when we haven't met yet, but when we do, I'm going to know if you've really been able to maintain focus. I'm just going to count your fingers. How many fingers has Greg got? In fact, perhaps now and again, you ought to send me a photograph and you just show me your fingers. Right. I'm staying focused. I'm keeping a balanced life. I'm keeping up with the woodworking.
Absolutely.
Well, I do photography. That's the thing that I do. That is my release. It has to maintain. I think it has to take you some degree of concentration. I think that's the aspect, because you can't be doing that and thinking about the business. So that's important.
Yeah, no, Mark, you can't be thinking about how this picture is going to come out if this notion of double tasking or, multitasking doesn't exist, right? If you're trying to get the picture, you got to be thinking about all those things around you that are going to make that picture good or bad. If you're all thinking about, next week I got to talk to Greg about a podcast, and then the picture's going to be okay, not great. So yeah, I'm with you. And I think that, I'm glad, what I like about the fact that you're willing to talk about it is, right, if people, as a CEO, as a leader, male, female, anybody, right? It's often a lonely job sometimes, right? You can't go to your board and say, "Wow, I'm really stressed out about this." You can't go to your team because they lose confidence in you. And so, I think it's great to be able to have that, that ability to talk and vent and learn and see what other people are doing, and because it's real, right? It's there. We all go through it. How do you cope with it? How do you use it as a strength and get through it? To your point of that person you talked to that worked through it, God bless, right? How do we do that? So excellent topic.
And I think one sort of final point on that, and as you were talking, actually, it reminded me that I think traditionally one other way that people are able to deal with stress, and perhaps this is where women perhaps tend to be a little bit better than men, is by talking to people that they know and trust. I remember, I don't know if you can remember the film, quite an old film now, Crocodile Dundee.
Yes, sir.
We're talking, he was talking to an American, I can't remember who it was, and talking about having a psychologist that went to speak to. And he said, "What, have you got no mates?" And I thought that's really interesting, because that's essentially what it is for a lot of people, isn't it?
Yep.
It's having people that you trust and won't judge you, and you can just say, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling at the moment, and this is why."
That's right.
Yeah. Well, tell us a bit about yourself. So what are you doing now? What's your business? What's it called? Shout it out there, and tell us, give us the pitch on what it is that you do, and what makes you excited about what you do.
Yeah, so what we're doing, Mark, is we're helping companies today deal with this notion of the changed buyer, and I'll get into that in a detail. But again, Greg Dickenson. The name of my company is Amadim, and I'm not that bright of a guy, so I had to come up with a name that I could remember. So Amadim is my demo spelled backwards. So that gives you a clue. What we're helping companies do is utilize the product, your crown jewel of any software company. How do you use that product to sell? And and that's what we're focused on, passionate about, love this. I moved to South Carolina about 3 years ago and said, all right, I miss business, I miss collaboration, I miss customers. There's got to be a problem out there that I have some experience in, and the demo was it. So, how do we use that as a way to help businesses sell more software? We say, how do you help the buyer buy?
Yes.
And if you think of it's interesting that we've all heard it. And Mark, I guarantee you said this, I said this, I've read it. The buyer's changed. But the big question is, so what? Like, what does that really mean to you? And when you hear the statistics that 77% of all buyers say that the buying process is hard, frustrating, and complex, gosh, that's a problem. If you hear that the buyer only spends 5% of their time with the supplier, the rest of the time is amongst their buying team, which has grown, doing validation, getting consensus and buy-in, gosh, that's a problem. How does sales influence that sale? So that's what we're focused on, is how do you provide a digital platform that includes the digital assets the buyer needs to get the information to make their buying decision, of course, in your favor. Let's utilize that and use the product as the centerpiece beyond that. So if they have a question about your product, they can get to it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not replacing the demo, but let's utilize a new technology to allow that demo to be something that the buyer can get their hands on early in the sales cycle and learn about your product. So it's fun stuff, and we're helping our customers to increase their pipeline, have a better close rate. Some of those no decision deals are now becoming decisions. How does marketing capture more leads? How does marketing remove the bounce rate off their website? Request a demo, the bounce rate is 85%. Let's change that. Let's make that buyer come to the website. You spent a lot of money. Let's engage them with your product second one, not next week, next month. How's that?
That's great. I love that. And then there's a number of points that I think that we can follow up. Give me an example, because I think bounce rates is true. People tend to flick about very, very quickly. They'll come to your website if it doesn't make sense to them, or if there's a frustration, they'll just go on somewhere else, because in the digital world there is always someone else.
Yeah.
How do you help to prevent that bounce rate?
Yeah, so think about this, right? And everyone on your podcast that's listening to this is going to cringe in about 10 seconds. You go to a customer's website, you want to learn more about their product. You read some copy, and then you say, gosh, I wish I could see the product. Up in the right-hand corner is a button. It says request a demo, get a demo, live demo, schedule demo. It says a million things. You click on it, and up pops a form. Today's software companies are keeping the demo, the product experience, they're holding it hostage. You got to fill out this form in order to see our product. So what happens? 85% of the time, Mark, you do it, I do it, every buyer does it. We click the X and we leave. We abandon. We walk away. We're not going to fill out that form in order to see your product. We have a lot of channels to get information. We'll go someplace else.
What do you think is the main reason why, or what are the main reasons? Yeah. What are the main reasons that people are reluctant to do that?
Well, first and foremost, they know what's going to happen next. So again, we're talking top of the funnel. I listened to a podcast of Mark's. The topic sounded interesting. I go to the website. My natural inclination is, gosh, I went to this website. I want to see the product. I want to learn more. It's top of the funnel. I don't know if I'm a buyer yet. I'd like to learn more. And if I fill out that form, I'm going to be placing a cadence. I'm going to get a phone call. I'm going to get a bunch of emails. I'm going to get nonstop, right, email harassment coming after me. And I'm not really ready to deal with a sales rep yet. I'd love to get my bearings and learn on my own and self-educate, which is, by the way, what all the research suggests buyers want to do.
Yes.
Right? If you draw an analogy, I think this will bring it home. Let's say you and I walk into an Apple store. Yes. And instead of all the phones on the tables, the desks, we can walk and pick, hey, Mark, look at this tablet. Isn't this cool? Look at this phone. Look what it can do. Instead, they're all locked up behind a cabinet, and the salesperson says, Mark, when you fill out this form, we'll get back to you in 48 hours. I say 48 hours because that's the average response time according to the Harvard research that was done. And you got to leave the store and come back 48 hours later when, gosh, maybe you were interested in buying the phone right then. So my point is that the process that businesses have set up are perfect for the buyer 20 years ago that was highly dependent on the company telling them about the product, the service, the functionality, the value, the ROI. Today, the buyer wants to learn a lot of that on their own. I like to say the buyer is more independent than they are dependent. Let the buyer buy. Don't close your store and have it open only, 15% of the time. And by the way, the other research we have with our customers, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, our customers that have these automated demos, our technology, the demos are being requested before 9 and after 6, 47% of the time, which means Mark's got a day job. He's doing M&A. He doesn't have time to go look at new software during the day. He'd prefer to do it before his day starts or after his day ends. That allows the buyer to buy at when the buyer wants to. Today, all demos are given between 9 and 5. Fill out the form. We'll give you a calendar. You can pick a date down the road, and we'll get on the phone and do a demo with you. Gosh, I just think that's archaic and doesn't work, and that's why the bounce rate is so high.
Do you think that's partly to do, because one of the things that I've noticed in this sector is that years ago, conversations used to be a lot around the sales process, salespeople, selling, and then as the internet started to really gain momentum and channels opened up, it became that marketing now was a much bigger part and sales had been shrunk down and was at the end. And I think that marketing gained power. They had more of a say, and they're wanting to capture information really early on, and they've now got more say, whereas in the past it used to be more about selling, sort of more at the latter part. Do you think there's a shift in power there? Because marketing want the data, don't they? They're going to say, yeah, but you're missing that data. We need to be able to market to these people.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. They could be looking to market them. Well, you could have already sold to them.
Yeah. But so let's peel that back because you hit the nail on the head. First off, when content marketing came about in the early 2000s, it was all about content marketing, and then the definition, this word became a MQL, marketing qualified leads, right? And websites became all about, hey, I've got these visitors, I need to convert them to an MQL, and guess what? The conversion rate from a visitor to a customer is less than 2%. So But yet, listen, most organizations, right, the marketing team, if you ask the marketing team how they're measured, they're going to say, we're measured on MQLs, how many leads we pass to sales. And sales will say, yeah, but gosh, because someone filled out a form and gave you their email doesn't mean they're a buyer. So you're giving me a lot of leads that aren't qualified. I turn that around and say, wouldn't it be better while they're on your website, engage them in your product, allow them to understand more about what you do, and then, right, you can use our technology to then have a marketing qualified lead that is an experienced buyer that's showing you buyer intent. They're telling you what they're interested in, why they're interested, what problems they want to solve. Gosh, what salesperson wouldn't raise their hand and say, I'll take that lead. I have Mark. I know he was interested in ROI. He was interested in integration. He was interested in how our product does parallel workflow and how we do reporting. I can have a conversation with Mark now to tell him how we do that and get him to understand why we should be his provider and not the competition. It's a different world, right? And I think you are describing organizations that are still right in transition, right? And,
yes.
And you know, there's a lot of chatter around chatbots and what those companies are doing. The reason that they're successful is because they're able to engage that buyer early on to set the appointment. We want to say, let's set the appointment, or why they're setting that appointment, let's get them in the product day one, right? And help marketing to be more efficient and more effective in who they get the leads from. I don't know that it's a quantity game as much as a quality game. Let's marketing and sales marry up and focus on revenue.
Wow. Do you see, it is a thought that just occurred to me, actually. That's a great point. Is the behavior being driven and the process being designed by quotas that they're putting in place? So, for instance, the marketing guy knows that he's being targeted at so many MQL leads. So he's designing the process so that he can achieve that quota, but it's not the process that the customer wants, and it's not the most successful process if you want to sell.
Yeah, bingo. I mean, if you look at, quote unquote, gated content. Hey, you want this white paper? Fill out this form. Hey, and what we're seeing more and more, the more progressive companies, the companies that are really growing at the good rates, are ones that are saying, gosh, content's available anywhere. There's podcasts, there's blogs, there's dedicated websites now like G2 Crowd that have all kinds of information about my product. There's Glassdoor that can tell me everything about the culture and the company. So all that content is really shouldn't be gated. It's available, but gosh, at our website, I want that information to come from me to you as opposed to you finding it elsewhere. So yeah, you're 100% correct that the quota of an MQL is driving. Only way to get an MQL is to keep as much as I can behind the gate, behind the payment vehicle, the payment being my title and my email, and then I can claim I hit my quota. It's funny, we have a customer, I won't mention the name of the company, but first conversation with their VP of growth was about what we're doing. He says, well, first of all, Greg, I don't believe the bounce rate number is 85%. But I'm going to get a guy on the phone that runs that for me. Let's see. Well, it turned out to be 93%. He said, but gosh, Greg,
that's a good start, that is.
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it?
I'll hold my breath right on my end. I'm going, okay, here we go.
So I can imagine you in that office, and they come back, and he puts the phone down and goes, okay, it's 93%. And you didn't smile a bit, did you?
No. I was standing up, and no, my fist didn't pump. And then we kept talking. He said, Greg, I got to admit, I'm old school. I'm after that email address, and I'm saying, so am I. I'm going to help you do that, but you don't let the product demo be held hostage, because they're going to go away. They're going to go someplace else. And gosh, if you have someone's attention, the research shows that if you can't engage with them within 5 minutes, you lost them.
Yes.
And so, gosh, if they want to see the product, go back to the Apple store and you don't show it to them, they may become an Android customer.
Yes.
Right? So we can't fight the fact that we've all, right, if you take Mark and Greg and 1,000 other people in our daily lives, when we shop for a hotel, when we shop for a car, when we shop for a new TV, we do it on the internet, we go to the store, we're ready to buy. If they make that process hard, they'll go someplace else. Think about it this way. Uber, the taxi, the black taxi in London and the yellow taxi in New York City, it's the same product that Uber offers. Uber makes that experience much easier. Guess what we do? We use Uber because it's easier, right?
Yeah.
Think of Netflix and Blockbuster, right? It's the same video. It's the same movie that you're going to view. Netflix made the buying experience easier. Netflix won. Blockbuster went out of business.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Two great examples as well, Chris. Greg, I call that oiling the sales process. It's removing the friction because there's friction, isn't there?
Yep. And that's what Gartner
I don't want to do that. I don't want to give you my email address. I don't want to have to phone and wait sometime. I want it now, and I want that bit now. Why can't I have it?
Yep. And we tend to buy, right, from those that make that process easier. If Gartner's data of 77%, that's a lot, right? Say that the buying process is frustrating, complex, and difficult. Gosh, I mean, how many deals does a company have in their pipeline and their forecast that they're making the buying process hard, therefore they're not going to win? Even if it's 50% of the transactions that are difficult, you're impacting your bottom line because you're making the buying process harder. Why? Because you have these X amount of phone calls per day, X amount of meetings today, X amount of MQLs, and you're selling to a buyer that existed 20 years ago.
Yes.
Right. And, it's interesting if you look at the stats of not every company can do this, but if you look at the stats of what's being called product-led, the companies like Zoom and Slack and Expensify, their product is bought, it's not sold. Not every company, if you think back to the transition of client server to SaaS, right? It took time for companies to get to be SaaS businesses. That
Absolutely.
Same transition is underway now. Some of these companies are product-led. Their growth is 35 times those that are not product-led. Their cost of sale is a lot less because they're using the product, which is, gosh darn it, what we're trying to buy when we come to your website, as a way to engage that buyer, not the white paper, not the WebEx, and not talking to the salesperson. They use it in conjunction. That's a digital buyer, and I need a digital platform to help that buyer stay engaged. Simple.
Yes.
Simple.
Yeah.
Not really.
So there's still a customer journey, but it's a different customer journey, and it's being viewed from a different perspective, more so from the perspective of that prospect, rather than through the eyes of the marketing or the salesperson or the organization as a whole.
Yeah, bingo. I mean, it's not arguable that the buying teams have gone from like 2 or 3 to on average 7 to 9. Gosh, Mark, if 7 or 9 people are making the decision, they're kind of huddled by themselves, right? And they're talking and they're debating and they're trying to do validation and buy-in around your solution. That is what they're doing, right? There's no arguing that's what they're doing. How do you enable that? If only 5% of their time is spent with you, what control do you have over your sales cycle? What influence do you have over that buyer? Because the buyer has a process. They have a job to do. It's to buy or fix. Mark is in the M&A business, and he needs technology to help him do X. Your team is going to get together and make that inquiry, start with 10, narrow it down to 3, and then go down to the decision-making process. How are you doing that? That's kind of your purview. You can now, as a buying team, reach out and get information without talking to sales. Well, I prefer in our company, I want my customers, my prospects to be able to come to me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week and know everything about our software. Everything. It's out there. Demo it yourself. Ask your own questions. By the way, when you ask a question of my technology, I record it in the background so I know buyer signals. I know buyer intent. I can help the marketing team and the sales team to understand Mark came. Mark asked these 6 questions. He invited these 3 other people to the buying team. So now as a salesperson, my experience with Mark can be personalized. It can be very contextual because I know what and why Mark is looking to buy my technology, which makes Mark, the buyer, much happier. You don't waste time with, let me start you off with the 50,000 pitch of what we do and who our logos are and where our offices are. Mark's like, Greg, I already went to your website. I know that data. I want to understand your product. How does it solve these 3 problems? That's why I'm here. Yeah, again, right? But you're hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah, I remember years ago, having a salesman come to me because I was after, it's like a wall covering for the outside of your house to protect your house. And I'd had several salespeople come to see me. I don't think I bought anything in the end, actually. But this sales guy came along and he sat down in front of me and he had this thick product book. And it was actually a presentation. And it went from sort of page 1 to 50. And he got this out and I thought, oh no. And I said, actually, what would be really good, because I now know what it's like being in sales. It's tough. I don't want to upset the guy. I said, don't show me your presentation. I've got some questions. And I said, is that possible? He said, yeah, sure. So I started to ask him the first question. He said, actually, that's in this presentation. Can I show you the presentation? I said, well, I'd just like to ask the question, really. I've just got a few questions. I know a bit about it. He couldn't do it. And actually, what he then proceeded to do was, in his mind, he was mentally trying to imagine each page, because that's the only way he could do it. He'd been trained to start at page 1 and end at page 50 and go right the way through. Yeah. And you see that now with PowerPoint presentations. Yeah. I'm going to tell you everything you might want to know about this. And it just goes on.
You're also hit another challenge, right? Which is, if you go back, 5, 10, 15 years, right, when the buyer was dependent on you for information,
yes,
they had no choice.
No.
And so they did listen to all 50 pages. Today, because of our phones, because of our world, we kind of want information. Here's my question, give me my answer. Here's my question, give me my answer. If you look at like YouTube, for example, the average watch time is 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Yeah. People want stuff in bursts. So what we developed our technology for is, if I wanted to listen to a WebEx or listen to a demo, a software demo, I'm not giving you 60 to 90 minutes. I'm just not. It's just not going to happen. So we developed ours so that Mark can come in, ask his 5 questions. It finds the answer on page 2, page 12, page 50, and page 60, gives Mark his 5 answers. Mark goes away. So Mark's happy. He got I was interested in X. Another buyer may be interested in Y. They ask 5 different questions. It brings them to the right section of the video where that is being demonstrated. So it aligns with our natural today attention span. No one sits through 60 minutes. That's why I listen to your podcast. They're 20 to 30 minutes. If your podcast was 60 minutes, I got to be honest with you, Mark, I probably wouldn't tune in. It's too long. I can't. Yep. I can't do that. I only work out for 20 minutes a day, but gosh darn it. So
yeah, and I think the average travel time is sort of 25, 30 minutes.
There you go.
And that's why we typically aim for that sort of length,
although
not always, I must admit. If I was to go to one of your clients' websites and I've got an understanding of what their software does, what am I going to see? What is it you've enabled? Create a visual picture, if you like, so people really understand what it is you do and the benefits of working with your company.
So it's basically 3 use cases. They all center around, picture this. You have a YouTube video. Today, if you want to watch the video, you have play, stop, fast forward, and rewind. We put Alexa on top of that video so that you can ask a question. Does your software do parallel workflow? It finds, first of all, out of your 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 videos, it finds the right 2 or 3 in which that topic is being discussed, and it queues up for you, Mark, the exact moment in video 1 in which we're going to demo to you parallel workflow, and it queues up for you in demo 2 where you're going to talk about parallel workflow. So it's an experience as a user where you can literally ask your question and find the right area. Or we provide a roadmap, a GPS, if you will, so that the customer can say, hey, Mark, here's a series of 5 or 10 or 20 recommended questions you may want to learn about. So it's a way for the customer to guide the prospect. And the third way that people learn is through browsing. So we provide the top 25 phrases, parallel workflow, reporting, adding users, security, right? And that way the prospect can click on, I'm interested in workflow, I'm interested in reporting, I'm interested in workflow, and it will bring them to the exact location in your recorded PowerPoint, in your webinar, in your demo, in which that topic is explained and shown, most importantly, because video is king. shown to that prospect. So that use case is used right off the website. You'll notice our customers don't have a request a demo button that is launching a form. Instead, they have, hey, take the demo right now. It's done that way. Salespeople, use case number 2. I have Mark on the phone. I'm prospecting. Mark says, gosh, Greg, what you're talking about is so exciting. I wish I could get a demo. Mark, are you at your computer? Go to this URL. Mark, I'll invite you to our demo. You can take your own demo whenever you want, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, by asking questions. Let me introduce that to you right now, Mark, and then you can experience everything you want on your time, on your schedule, based on your context and your questions.
Not a 3 p.m. next Thursday.
Boom. Exactly. Use case number 3. Hey, we're selling to a larger customer. We've done a 90-minute scripted demo, and inevitably, Mark, as my sponsor, says, Greg, God, it was a great demo, but 2 executives weren't able to attend today. We got to redo it, but they're not going to sit through 90 minutes. So can you figure out a way to just do a demo to answer these 2 or 3 questions, and the pre-sales person spin it? How do I do that? With our technology, let's record the customer private meeting, put it in a private portal, and when Mark says those 2 executives miss, say, who are they? I'll invite them right now. They can come and experience exactly the same thing we experienced today, and they'll hear all the questions that Mark and the other buyers asked, and they'll see those, and they can get their information in 5 minutes and go back to their busy schedule. So kind of that's the painting a picture of how do you enable that buyer to learn, to engage, to validate your technology, to increase, their likelihood of buying through those inside sales, marketing off the website, and then salespeople, pre-sales people utilizing this technology to engage deeper, not replace anything, right? Engage deeper. It does help our customers that are looking to hire pre-sales people, which is about 90% of all of our customers. It's a big, huge open headcount. Now they don't necessarily have to hire 10. They can hire 2 or 3 because a lot of those upfront early demos can now be automated and digitized. So that's the kind of the 3 or 4 use cases that our customers are taking advantage of and driving more business.
And I assume also that it's capturing some really valuable information that can be captured with a URL and put into a CRM system.
Yeah, thank you for that. Every interaction or all activity that your prospect has with your demo environment is stored. So we know what recommended questions did they click on, which phrases did they click on, which questions did they actually type in or ask, and how long did they watch the video? When did they watch the video? How did they invite other people? All that is captured. And yes, if you're using Salesforce or HubSpot or, Marketo, we'll push that data into your backend so your salesperson now has, that activity. One of the most exciting times for a salesperson is when they call me and say, man, yesterday, 5 of my prospects came online and took a demo, and I knew it. That gets because they know that customer is engaged, right? That customer is showing buyer intent by engaging where, hey, Greg, could you please send me something, a PDF? Did they read it? Did they throw it away? Did they even open the email? I guess we could validate that, but that's about it, right?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Here, we're getting closer to the bullseye of, is this really a buyer that's going to, listen, it's okay to engage with a buyer that's not going to buy for 6 or 9 months, but you kind of want to know that. And you can know that by how they engage and what questions they ask. When they start asking integration questions, they start asking pricing questions, they start asking customer reference questions, that's a buyer that's getting close versus the first one that says, how or can you do reporting? That's a little bit weaker than how long does it take to implement, right?
Yes.
You learn from that, and you and I know from past experience and conversations, a quote unquote, what's a buying question?
Yes, absolutely. Great information.
Fun stuff, isn't it?
It is absolutely, yeah. What I love about this is its innovation, and our audience are software entrepreneurs. So you're talking to the right people here, and I think that's going to interest, and it's definitely going to make a lot of the people out there really think. Before we sort of sum up and we finish, I like to sometimes.
You have to. It was so much fun. I want to stay on.
It's been good. Well, I think
too.
I think we'll invite you back, and we'll carry on the conversation, because there's been some great points that I think that you've made today. But I'm going to challenge you a little bit here, and I think you can handle it. But I haven't sort of qualified this with you before. But thinking about the software sector in particular here, what are the 3 most common mistakes that you see them make in the things that we've been talking about today, and the way that they present themselves to the world, the way that they're offering their solutions?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, right, we live in a now world, right? And we use the analogy of Netflix and Uber. We could even say Amazon and the book experience. But that the buyer is now. Companies tend to have invested millions of dollars in, quote unquote, their internal processes that are not necessarily built for now. They're built for their process, right? Oh, we're going to go through this, and then we're going to put them in a linear path. They're qualified. They're this, they're that. And that is a mistake, because you're saying, hey, we're going to make our buyers buy the way we sell. That's not happening. It's just not happening. And those are, some examples we talked about. I think the second thing I see that bothers me, I started off in enterprise sales as a pre-sales engineer, a demo person. Loved it, right? I loved that job. I took it at Ariba in 1997 when there was like 35 employees, and I just think it's the greatest job in the world, because I get to go off and showcase what we do and get you excited. And the demand for the demo has increased, and the number of pre-sales engineers is harder and harder to keep up, right? Scalability wise. So more companies are saying, hey, I hired Greg to be an internal BDR to cold call and prospect, but I'm going to make him demo. I just think that's a mistake, because one product demo, it's like one bad meal at a restaurant. You go to a restaurant that you heard people talk about and the meal stinks, you're probably not getting a second chance. And if you have a demo and the demo is not well received, and there's some statistics that have come out that suggest that 86% of buyers say the first meeting is not meeting their expectations, that's one of the reasons why. And you can't blame a BDR or an SDR or inside salesperson. That's not why you hired them. You didn't hire them to be a demo person. You hired them to prospect, to sell, to call. And I don't blame companies. They're under the stress of, hey, I can't not demo to Mark. But I think there are ways to make that process better. Our software is being used by some organizations to help get their scale and get their sales and inside sales team up to speed more about what their software can and cannot do. So, working in that area.
And why not capture and make available your best ever demo?
Bingo.
It's like if I was to think back when I used to play football, if I had recorded my best ever game, that's the game I would like people to see, not the one when I turned up and I was tired and I played badly. So
thank you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Just before our podcast, I was on the call with a customer 9:30 this morning, and they're getting ready they're new and they're getting ready to build their demos, and the person asked me, quote unquote, Greg, we sell 3 or 4 different things. There are really different people in our company that are stronger at talking to and presenting and demonstrating those different points. Is it okay if I have 2 or 3 people actually do the video recording? Because after they record it, we do all the work, right? All the thing I talked about today, this natural language processing and this search and this Alexa thing is all done by us. I said, yes, that's what we want you to do, because you want to take your best, your brightest, your most professional, your most consistent, and that's what your customers are going to see. You don't want the store to be clean one day and dirty the next, and clean the next day, and great food, then bad food, great food, then bad food. You want to put your best foot forward. You only get one chance to impress. So 100%, that's another, kind of area that I see. We all have, how do I say this nicely? We all have different skills in our sales and organization, different ranks of skills. And it's not really, it's better to put your best foot forward as often as you can. Not always possible, but in this world of the product presentation, the product demo, the why company XYZ, what makes us special, what makes us unique, you've got some people in your company do a better job at that than others. Put them forward, scale them, make them repeatable. Love it.
Excellent. I love that one. Superb. You've done a great job today. I've enjoyed the podcast. Just to sort of finish up.
I didn't enjoy it at all.
You're lying to me, Greg. I know you're lying to me.
It's a lot of fun when someone asks.
It is. No, you've done a great job today. To tell people your website URL, because I think that will be useful. There'll be a lot of people that will be fascinated by what you said, and I defy anybody who's on this podcast to say there wasn't something that they learned today. Anybody, if there is, email me. You're lying.
So I'm G Dickinson at Omedym. Again, my demo spelled backwards, so OMEDYM.com. And I'm Greg Dickenson, G Dickinson at Omedym.com. Please, love to get some feedback. I enjoy conversations. I want to learn. I want to hear from you. I want to understand, am I hitting the nail on the head, or are there other challenges that your company needs to focus on? That makes me smarter, makes me better. I surround myself with smart people, and I consider people that talk to me smarter than me. So let's have that conversation. Mark, I can't thank you enough for inviting me today. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm with you that hopefully, right, if someone invested 25, 30 minutes of time, they walked away with one thing. You and I did our job.
Hopefully, yes. No, I've enjoyed it immensely. And thank you for taking the time and reaching out to me on the Boss It podcast. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks very much, Greg. So that was, I think you'll find that was a really entertaining, not only entertaining, but really informative conversation with Greg. I would say to you, reach out, have a look at his website, have a look what he does, but it's relevant to all of you that listen to this podcast. And it's been great fun. As always, if you've liked this podcast, please do share it, speak to others about it. If you haven't, come and tell me why. And if you've got some questions, remember the topic that I'm looking to put a podcast together again is about stress. And we may also do one on scaling as well. But so if you've got anything on that, please let me know. But until then, I look forward to speaking to another guest and reaching out to you all. Thank you very much. This was the